The Light, August 2017. International organ of the Center for the Worldwide Ahmadiyya Anjuman Isha'at Islam. Contents: The Call of the Messiah. Centenary of Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali's English translation. The Holy Quran by Dr. Zahid Aziz. Identity Theft Final Part by Ian Dixon. The Patch to Success by E. Muhammad. Killing Children by Alicia Shah. End of contents. The Call of the Messiah by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. The Promised Messiah and Mahdi. Indisputable knowledge of God a prerequisite to righteous life. It is a truly sound tenet that, to be saved from sins, man requires a certain knowledge of God and not any redemption. I say to you sincerely that if the people of Noah had the perfect knowledge which generates the fear of losing the love of God, they would not have been drowned, and if the people of Lot had fully recognized their Lord, they would not have been stoned to death. And if the people of this country had been granted the true knowledge of God which makes one tremble at the idea of a transgression of His commandments, it would not have been thus destroyed with the plague. But, inadequate knowledge cannot benefit in the least because imperfect love, fear, and faith knowledge is worthless. If you do not take sufficient food, it will not sustain you, or if the full dose of medicine is not administered, it would not do any good. One grain cannot satisfy your hunger, nor one drop of water quench your thirst. How can you of little courage and slow in the search of truth, hope to be the recipients of the vast blessings and unmeasured grace of God by a little knowledge and a little love and a little fear? It is for Him to purify you from sins and to fill your hearts with His love and awe. He has established the law that all this is granted to a man after he has attained to certainty in his knowledge, for knowledge is the root from which love and fear spring. He who is given a perfect knowledge is also granted perfect love and perfect fear, and he who is granted these, has attained to salvation, because he is purified from sin. For this salvation, therefore, we do not stand in need of the shedding of blood, or of crucifixion or of atonement. What we require for its attainment is only a sacrifice, and that a sacrifice of our own self. This is a requirement of our very nature, and this is the true significance of Islam. Islam means the laying down of the head for being slaughtered and to bow down with entire submission at the divine threshold. The beloved name of Islam is the soul of the whole of law and the essence of all the commandments. To lay down oneself willingly and with a joyful heart for being slain, which is the true significance of Islam, means a perfect love, while perfect love indicates perfect knowledge. The word Islam therefore, clearly signifies that true sacrifice, which is necessary for the salvation of man, requires perfect love and perfect knowledge and not anything else. Referring to this, Almighty God says in the Holy Quran, the flesh of these, i.e. the animals slaughtered, does not reach God, nor their blood, but the sacrifice that God accepts from you is that you should fear Him and walk in righteousness for His sake. End of article. Centenary of the appearance of Maulana Muhammad Ali's English translation and commentary of the Quran. Compiled by Zahid Aziz. In September this year, it will be 100 years since the English translation of the Holy Quran with commentary by Maulana Muhammad Ali was first published in 1917, right here in England. In April 1916, Maulana Muhammad Ali, after a labor of about 7 years, completed work on the translation and commentary. In his Friday sermon on April 28 he gave the good news to the Lahore Ahmadiyya community. Today is a day of happiness for me. For years, I have been busy in the work of translating the Holy Quran into English. By the grace of Allah, I have completed it today. I am not happy like a student who, at the end of his examination, feels that now he will have free time and can rest for a few days. I am happy because all the time that I was involved in this work I was worried that life is so fickle and it may be that this work would be left incomplete. Of course, Allah is not short of men, and it was His work which would have been completed somehow. If He has given strength to a weak person like me to start this work, there is no reason why He could not get it done by someone else. But it gives great pleasure to a person to complete by his own hand in his own life the work that he had started. This work is now before you. All of it has been sent to the press. I have received proofs of 8 parts, Up to this time proofs of 19 parts have arrived. Editor Paksam Sulh. We need very soon to think about the printing expenses. This is not our only work, there are many others that you have to do. Complete this first. It is a service to Islam, rather, it is purely a service to the Quran. So, be concerned about it and prepare resources for it. May Allah grant this to be done. Ameen. Lahore Ahmadiyya Urdu Organ Paksam Sulh, May 28, 1916, p. 68. It was decided to have it printed in England because the printing machines that were required for the high-quality, fine paper, to be used to produce it in one volume, were not available in India. At that time Maulana Sadruddin, d. 1981, who later succeeded Maulana Muhammad Ali as head of the Lahore Ahmadiyya Anjuman in 1951, was Imam of the mosque at Woking, and he was entrusted with the arrangements for its printing, a task which he accomplished extremely well. Maulana Muhammad Ali spent the whole of the year 1916 preparing the index and the preface and introduction, and at the same time going through the first proofs which came from England. These proofs were initially read by Maulana Sadruddin in England, and then read and corrected by Maulana Muhammad Ali in his own hand in Lahore. After that stage, the reading of the second proofs, the correction of the Arabic text, and all the other tasks in connection with the printing were done by Maulana Sadruddin. In the Islamic Review, the monthly magazine of the Woking Muslim Mission, the following progress report was published in the issue for June 1916 on the first page. As was expected, the announcement of the publication of an English translation of the Holy Quran, with elaborate notes and the Arabic text, aroused worldwide interest, and we have been doing our best to hurry the publication. But unavoidable circumstances have delayed it, for which the gigantic war is greatly responsible. In fact, if we had not already announced the publication, and if we had not found that there is general impatience to read the translation, we would have postponed the publication till the end of the war. Prices of all the materials required for printing that voluminous book have gone up. We found it sometimes difficult even to get the material wanted. Delays have been caused in post, and so forth. Then we found that the bulk of the book would be much more than we had first thought, so it was considered necessary to use India paper, the most expensive thin paper, and to enlarge the size of the book in order to reduce the bulk and make it handy. The pages will now run to about 1300. The English portion is almost finished, and would have reached the hands of the public if the Arabic text had not been considered necessary to go with the translation of the uncorrupted and incorruptible Last Testament, the final Gospel. Because of this war it was found not practicable to use type for the Arabic text. So now an expert copyist in India has been engaged to write out the text on the English pages sent from here. That writing is sent back to our engravers, who photograph it and obtain zincos thereof. Then the printing of the text is done in the space left for that purpose in the English translation. As is obvious, this makes the process very elaborate, and has increased the price of the work, but because the calligraphy of the text will be very handsome, those readers who know Arabic will be much pleased with Arabic writing all done by hand. The book, besides its precious and holy contents, will form an ornament to any library, and will be a unique work of its description. In the next number of the review we shall be able to give the specimen pages, which will be exactly as in the book when ready. The price of the book cannot now be lower than £1, which, considering the increased expenses and the expensive material used, will be nothing. We have no doubt that when the compilation reaches the hands of the public they will fully appreciate the labor of love done over it by our esteemed brother Maulvi Muhammad Ali, M.A., Bachelor of Laws. The following year this much-awaited book was out of the press by September. In the Islamic Review, September 1917, p. 393, its announcement appeared under the heading, "The first English translation and commentary of the Holy Quran by a Muslim theologian." It ran as follows. The Maulvi Muhammad Ali, M.A., Bachelor of Laws, has prepared, after a labor of about 9 years, an English translation, with necessary notes and commentary, of the Holy Quran, which has been printed in England and has just come out after unavoidable delays caused by the war. Each copy contains about 1,400 pages, and includes a comprehensive preface showing the special features of Islam as preached in the Holy Book, and an exhaustive discussion of the authenticity of the Holy Book, its original purity and incorruptibility, in which the Maulvi definitely proves that the Holy Book as it stands today is exactly as it was arranged by the Holy Prophet Muhammad himself. Elaborate indexes are also given. The whole cost has come up to £1,500. The price of a leather-bound, gilt-edged copy on good India paper is 20s, to be had of the Islamic Review Office, the Mosque, Woking, Surrey. Although it has increased the expense greatly, it was thought very necessary that the original text in Arabic, written by expert calligraphists in India, should also accompany the translation of each verse, as can be seen on the sample pages. The translation is very faithful. The notes and commentary are fully comprehensive and explanatory, and every objection of Western critics has been met and answered. The mistakes of European translators and commentators have been corrected on the authority of old commentators as well as expert Arabic scholars. The relation of one chapter to the other and the connected context of the verses of each chapter have been fully established. An abstract of both chapters and sections is also given. To those who know the learned translator, his very name would be a guarantee to them that the translation is scholarly, and the commentary is based on the authentic traditions of the great prophet as interpreted by the authentic Muslim savants. For the benefit of strangers, the selection of the sample pages has been such as to give out the characteristics of the translation of the whole, so that the reader of these pages should be able to form some idea of the nature of the whole volume. It would but be superfluous to dilate upon the need of an English translation by a person who has not only a command over the English language but also over the original, i.e. Arabic, text of a book which holds the most unique position in the world of literature. The price of the book, in top quality and leather bound, is given above as 20 shillings, which is £1, 1 UK pound. We can get an idea of what £1 would be in the year 1917 by noticing that the price of the above issue of the Islamic Review was 7 old pence. This means that the price of the book is about 35 times the price of one issue of this magazine, as £1 consisted of 240 old pence. In the same issue of the Islamic Review, 16 consecutive pages from this translation are reproduced in facsimile form, starting at the beginning of chapter 1 of the Quran. As being the first English translation by a Muslim. The heading of the above announcement describes this translation and commentary as the first by a Muslim theologian. Before this translation, 3 English translations of the Quran by Muslims had been published. These were by Abdul Hakim Khan, 1905, Mirza Abul Fazl, 1911, and Mirza Haray of Delhi, 1912, and were all published in India. They were, however, of limited circulation and little known. In a book, The Student's Quran, published in India in 1961, the author Hashim Amir Ali has listed several English translations of the Quran in chronological order, including those by Abdul Hakim Khan and Mirza Abul Fazl as numbers 5 and 6 in his list. Maulana Muhammad Ali's is at number 7 and he writes of it as follows. 7. Muhammad Ali. The first work published by any Muslim with the thoroughness worthy of Quranic scholarship and achieving the standards of modern publications. The author of a review of English translations of the Quran, written around 1999, entitled Translating the Holy Quran, Is There an Ultimate Translation of the Quran? Dr. Anu Hamathila of Tamil Nadu, India, has listed some criteria for determining which of the numerous English translations of the Quran are worthy of a detailed review, comparison, and examination. On that basis, he eliminates the English translation attempts by Muslims before Maulana Muhammad Ali as being of just historical interest and inconsequential translations. The description in the Islamic Review announcement quoted above, that Maulana Muhammad Ali's work is the first, by a Muslim theologian, is also accurate, as the 3 preceding Muslim translators were not Islamic scholars or theologians. Moreover, it is a fact that the Maulana's English translation of the Quran was the first by a Muslim to be published in the West, as it was printed at the famous Gresham Press of Unwin Brothers Limited in Woking, England, and published in 1917 from the Islamic Review Office at the Woking Mosque in a quantity of 5,000 copies. It was thus the first by a Muslim to be available in the world generally. End of article. Identity Theft Final Part. By Ian Dixon. In this short series of articles, I have tried to convey my frustration that people have misrepresented the beautiful character of Allah, hijacking His loving nature, and turning it instead into something repulsive. A moth gladly flutters towards a light bulb, but cockroaches will flee from the light emanating from the same bulb. How has the Creator of heaven and earth been represented to a watching world? Has Allah been painted as loving, compassionate, full of tender mercy towards His creation? Are we drawn to Him as a moth is drawn to the light? Or have we in the same breath said, Allahu Akbar, and represented Allah as pure evil, desiring to crush, kill, and destroy? Just as cockroaches run from the light, have we portrayed Allah in such a way that people want to flee from Him, rather than run to Him? We are reminded in the honored Quran that those who believe and work deeds of righteousness, will Allah most gracious bestow love. Surah 19:96. We are also told, He forbids all shameful deeds, and injustice and rebellion. Surah 16:90. Much that is done in the name of Islam makes a mockery of much that is written in the Quranic scriptures. Allah is looking for a people who will represent His character, a people who will reflect His love, compassion, and mercy. Just as a fingerprint reveals the unique identity of its possessor, so too we are to be the fingerprints of Allah, bearing His beautiful image to a broken world. People have dishonored Allah and His law through their actions. Pride for status, selfishness, and a disregard for His righteousness has caused havoc in the world. It is pure rebellion towards the Creator of heaven and earth. A rebellion that drives people away from encountering the beauty of Allah, or rebellion that leads people into darkness and captivity. As the Bible expresses it, the heart is deceitful above all things. Jeremiah 17:9, All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned everyone to his own way. Isaiah 53:6. Have we followed the way of Iblis and become rebellious, defiant? He refused and was haughty, he was of those who reject faith. Surah 2:34. Unfortunately, the way of true Islam, true submission to Allah, is hard to find today. But it exists. Don't be fooled by looking to great organizations, sects, or religions. Begin by turning your own face to Allah. When I hear the azan, the call to prayer, I am reminded of a compass point pointing north, in that it brings direction and focus in all the chaos we call the map of life, a life filled with changes and turnings, dead ends, and roadblocks. The compass points true north and helps us recalibrate our lives. The azan challenges all the distractions of life, and there is a call to come out of the world, and point our hearts in the direction of Allah. In the Bible, we are told of a worldwide azan. Although people have misrepresented the character of Allah, there is a worldwide call to return to the true God, a call that leads us to worship Him in submission and truth. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, and worship Him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. Revelation 14:6-7. Did you notice that? The hour of His judgment has come. I wonder if that phrase could be interpreted in two ways. Sure, Allah's eyes are upon us now, and He sees our thoughts and actions. We are being judged. But have you ever thought that Allah Himself is being judged by an unbelieving and skeptical world? Has the misrepresentation of His character resulted in Allah being laughed at, scorned, hated? Not taken seriously? Is this worldwide azan a challenge for us to so love God, so obey Him, so serve Him that people would begin to recognize the magnificence of our Creator? I find it interesting that Jesus Himself lived to give glory to Allah. When Jesus was nailed to the cross, beaten and scarred, it was not as a defeated person. He lived and breathed integrity to Allah. The DNA of Jesus' life was "Your will be done." Matthew 6:10. He was the embodiment of true Islam. Many centuries before he was born into this world, it was said that he will magnify the law, and make it honorable. Isaiah 42:21. Jesus did everything to bring honor to Allah despite being misunderstood and mistreated. We are given his example to follow. Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that you should follow in his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. 1 Peter 2:21-22. It is well known that during wartime road signposts are turned round to point people in the wrong direction and to confuse them. As we watch the media, and read reports of violence and shameful things done in the name of Allah, may we take up the challenge to be a genuine signpost, pointing others to the true worship of Allah, and not follow those who have committed identity theft. These people have twisted signposts of Allah's character, and have pointed people in the wrong direction. We can choose to be different. And Allah can help us change. We are told in the honored Quran that it is He who created you from clay. Surah 6:2. Allah is a master potter. Not only did He make and fashion each one of us, but He can reshape our hearts too. Will we ask Him to? Wearing long beards, niqab, and praying in a correct manner may look good to an outsider, but Allah sees the hearts of all. With far too many, obedience to Allah's word is only on the lips. They have obedience merely on their lips. Surah 4:81. Jesus rightly put it when he said, "This people draws nigh unto me with their mouth and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." Matthew 15:8. What I see in the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, is a people who are constantly examining themselves, constantly reaching out for more, constantly trying to be a better people, a people longing for a raiment of righteousness. But the raiment of righteousness, that is the best. Such are among the signs of Allah. Surah 7:26. This reaching up, this longing for righteousness is a beautiful longing. So different from those who have committed identity theft. And the path to success. Eid al-Fitr message. By Ibrahim Muhammad, President AAII Lahore, South Africa. Almighty God be praised and thanked abundantly for granting us this day of Eid al-Fitr, a day of ever-recurring joy, to celebrate that inner joy that culminates after a month of fasting for the sake of God, a month of intense prayers and supplications, and charity for the poor and indigent out of love for Him. Despite all the grimness in the world, Ramadan, the month of fasting observed by Muslims throughout the world, has shown that the Muslim fraternity can rise above their own selfish and self-centered tendencies, on the one hand having been afforded the opportunity of engaging in serious introspection to improve themselves, whilst at the same time reaching out for the less fortunate with love and compassion in a manner that drew the admiration of many outsiders. The joys and exhilaration that we experience this day are like the joy and gratification that a farmer feels when harvesting a luxuriant crop after long periods of cultivation of the land, followed by planting of the seeds with careful precision, watering it, and guarding it with the utmost vigilance and care against harmful elements until the crops grow to maturity and bear fruit. This allegory of the farmer and his lush crops illustrates what we undergo during the month of fasting to reap the spiritual fruits that bring joy and contentment of the heart. We are thus reminded that our whole life should be about ensuring the proper growth to perfection of those latent seeds of morality and spirituality that Almighty God had placed inside us, so that we may enjoy the bliss and well-being when those seeds reach fruition. This happens when we reach a state of complete God consciousness, that state of being that brings us closer to God and complete surrender to His will. This state is what the Holy Quran repeatedly refers to as our falah or success, and therefore the Holy Quran says, "He indeed is successful who causes it, the soul, to grow." 91:9. The word successful in the Holy Quran comes from the root word falah, which also means self-improvement, or the unfoldment of hidden qualities that evolve into a state of happiness and well-being. In the rich, comprehensive Arabic language, it is interesting to note that a farmer is often referred to as falah because a farmer is the one who works hard to till the land in order to grow successful crops of delicious fruits, vegetables, herbs, flowers, etc. Such crops that give recurring delight to the beholder and the harvester. This is the meaning of Eid, an ever-recurring happiness and joy, accompanied by well-deserved festivities. The same principle on which the harvesting of a successful crop by a farmer is based, applies to our relationship with the Holy Quran, which often stands for the spiritual rain that enlivens our souls and causes it to grow into super God consciousness that knows no end. The Holy Quran alludes to this, metaphorically, when it says, "And he it is who sends down water from the clouds, then we bring forth with it buds of all plants, then we bring forth from it green foliage, from which we produce clustered grain, and of the date palm, of the sheaths of it, come forth clusters, of dates, within reach, and gardens of grapes and the olive and the pomegranate, alike and unlike. Look at the fruit of it when it bears fruit and the ripening of it. Surely there are signs in this for a people who believe." 6:99. So, what are the signs or lessons for us in this beautiful picture of a luxuriant garden, the soil of which was given life to by salubrious rain from the heavens? The month of Ramadan has highlighted this principle in a spiritual sense. We watered the garden of our souls through reading, reciting and studying the Holy Quran more intensely, we engaged in additional prayers sometimes in the middle of the night, we fasted to gain the pleasure of Almighty Allah, we gave charity out of compassion and concern for the poor and less fortunate. In this manner we worked hard to transform the raw seeds of lust, anger, and greed in us into useful moral qualities that are beneficial and not destructive to ourselves and humankind at large. We were afforded the opportunity to collectively put a check on our lusts and turned it into love and compassion that extended beyond our own families to the less fortunate in particular. We worked on our anger and egotistic natures by turning it into well-placed bravery and patience that developed further into the moral qualities of being firm and principled in the face of injustice and cruelty. The seeds of greed in us were transformed into moral qualities of being up and doing against all forms of injustice, forbidding what is wrong and enjoining what is good, not being insolent and lethargic, and an idle fence-sitter, yet at all times avoiding extremities. These are but some basic examples of how the Ramadan taught us to cultivate our own souls for it to grow into moral and spiritual fruits. In the holy month of Ramadan, we did all this like a farmer, so that we could reap the fruits of our falah, i.e. the success of both this world and the next. In the next life this crop, built up from our good deeds here, will, by the mercy of Almighty God, manifest itself as the most beautiful garden of bliss unimaginable to our physical senses here, as promised repeatedly in the Holy Quran to the steadfast. But like anything else in life, we need expert guidance as to the best methods to adopt to enhance the growth of our souls. We need to know what is useful and what should be avoided. This guidance comes in the form of the Holy Quran. So, He reveals to it its way of evil and its way of good. 91:8. The Holy Quran tells us what is harmful for us and what is good for us. It is the most up-to-date and authentic guide for humankind. The Holy Quran is clear on who its author is. Thus, we are told at the very beginning, "I Allah am the best knower." This book, there is no doubt in it, is a guide to those who keep their duty 2:1-2. Therefore, in order for the falah unfoldment of our souls to develop from a state of low, uncontrolled animal passions to a highly civilized, moral status, we must turn to the Holy Quran for our guidance. If our approach to the Holy Book is anything other than this, and that is, when it is merely recited at special occasions such as weddings and funerals etc., or treated as an object for debate to sport some academic prowess, then all our efforts will be futile, like the chaff of the failed crop mentioned in the Holy Quran, which says, "Know that this world's life is only sport and play and gaiety and boasting among yourselves and avying in the multiplication of wealth and children. It is as rain, whose causing the vegetation to grow pleases the farmer, then it withers away so that you see it turning yellow, then it becomes chaff." 57:20. This tells us that success according to Islam is not measured in terms of material possessions which tend to occupy a bigger part of our lives. Nay, instead it will lead to a failure of the spiritual crop, even though it might be seemingly pleasing to us. Our duty is to bring ourselves to the point of true morality that makes us competent of building a civilization based on righteousness, compassion, and justice for all. A civilization where we find comfort in being principled and stand firm by truth and justice at all costs, avoiding hypocrisy and duplicity, typical weaknesses of modern-day leadership across the political and religious spectra that are ruining the moral fabric of society in the world. To use the metaphor of the farmer in the Holy Quran above, these are the weeds that we do not want in our garden, for it will retard our growth and turn our crops, i.e. the fruits of all our hard labor, into useless chaff. Who, these days, can deny the fact that due to the infiltration of such weeds into the garden of Islam, Muslims in general and Muslim nations still find themselves so divided? There appears to be no empathy along the lines of a common brotherhood. Religious scholars cannot agree even on simple mundane issues such as when is the day of Eid or when does the fast begin. When a leading nation in the Muslim world can spend billions of dollars on arms and use it with impunity on a virtually defenseless, ill-equipped Muslim neighbor, mercilessly killing thousands and rendering millions of them, women and children, destitute in the process, then we know there is something very, very seriously wrong somewhere. Even the holy month of Ramadan was not spared for such barbaric behavior, nor did it bring about a change of heart nor a vestige of the moral transformation highlighted above. Whilst it is encouraging these days to see many video clips circulating on social media condemning such behavior as well as clips extolling the beauty of the Holy Quran, these postings are of short-lived admiration, and no sooner everyone reverts to the same humdrum state of life. This sorry state prevails despite the fact that nowadays religious clerics are churned out like produce off a conveyor belt in a factory without any quality checks or screening done before they are set loose on an indifferent, couldn't care less society. These clerics are blindly admired for their packaged education to the extent that their lacking in wisdom and integrity is often overlooked. Nowadays, we also find people flocking to Mecca in droves, yet with all these well-intentioned efforts there is still no visible transformation of note. Instead of those noble moral qualities of love, compassion, empathy, relentless thirst for justice, etc., referred to above, flourishing and becoming a dominant feature of note in our communities, we still see too much of the low raw qualities of lust, anger, and greed prevail. There now seems to be a growing general consensus from a forward-thinking sector with seemingly genuine concern that at the root of all this chaos lies a serious ideological disease. The founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, 19th-century Muslim reformer, diagnosed and identified this disease accurately 100 years ago and actively set about in treating its root causes, not just the peripheral, superficial symptoms of the disease. Since the disease set in as a result of gross distortions of the teachings of Islam by misguided clerics largely influenced by anti-Islamic propaganda, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad made it very clear that the only solution was to provide quality literature that gives the correct, unadulterated teachings of Islam as a cure for the disease. The Woking Muslim Mission in England and the establishment of the Berlin Mission in Germany at the turn of the 20th century by the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement were the first of their kind in the West to carry out this noble work. The Lahore-based Ahmadiyya movement, despite opposition from mainstream Muslims plagued by sectarian strife, has over a century successfully produced widely acclaimed, top-quality literature geared at improving the overall moral condition of the Muslims, not such that leaves sincere seekers in a constant state of confusion and misguidance, nor such that breed militant jihadists and suicide bombers, nor such that perpetuate sectarian strife where even something as simple as how do you define who is a Muslim cannot be determined with clarity by so-called leading scholars boasting fancy theological degrees. In Pakistan, a country where acts of terror are still much out of control, members of the Ahmadiyya movement, by law, are not allowed to practice Islam and propagate its peaceful message in that country. This is the cruelest piece of legislation existing anywhere in the world today that should be condemned with the contempt that it deserves by any decent, fair-minded person. This grossly inhumane Pakistani legislation is an abuse of a most basic human right, and that is the freedom of worship afforded to humankind by none other than Almighty God Himself, who has declared, "There is no compulsion in religion." 2:256. Nevertheless, under these most oppressive circumstances, the central body in Pakistan have not given up serving humanity. These days the work of the organization is focused on providing free humanitarian support to the poor and indigent, which at least they are not prohibited from doing under Pakistani law. Last year they provided more than 50,000 patients with free medical treatment and medicines from the Maulana Muhammad Ali dispensary. 1,700 patients were provided with free ultrasounds, and more than 500 with free X-rays. 56 widows receive financial support and more than 70 students receive free education. In Europe, our Berlin Mosque has been designated monumental status by the German government and is seen as a favorite tourist attraction with a constant flow of visitors from all parts of the world, Muslim and non-Muslim. In this way, our renowned peaceful propagation efforts of Islam in a part of the world blinded by prejudice, is most effective and vital in countering anti-Islamic propaganda. From our organization in the United States we hear the good news of the tremendous strides being made in the translation and publication of our literature into Arabic. This is a phenomenal achievement, considering the smoldering situation in the Middle East where extremist ideologies are rife. In South Africa, our national outreach program in the dissemination of the Holy Quran and other free literature is continuing. Hundreds of libraries across the country have benefited from this initiative thus far. At an Eid al-Fitr celebration in Johannesburg, South Africa, the guest of honor, the Deputy President of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, remarked, "As you, Muslims, performed service and acts of goodwill and charity for the poor and needy members of our communities, you reminded us that Islam is a faith founded on compassion, justice, and universal brotherhood. It is about giving, not taking. It is about generosity, not greed. It is about love, peace, truth, and tolerance. Not hatred, violence, dishonesty, and bigotry. And these are universal human values upon which we need to anchor our new society." End of article. Killing Children. By Alicia Shaw, Trinidad. "And kill not your children for fear of poverty we provide for them and for you. Surely the killing of them is a great wrong." Ch 17. v 31. "Glory to thee, O Allah, and thine is the praise, and blessed is thy name, and exalted is thy majesty, and there is none to be served besides thee. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed devil. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful." The intentional killing of infants is known as infanticide. In the pre-Islamic Arabia, infanticide was a common practice, but more specifically it was female infants who were killed, sometimes buried alive as soon as she was born. In chapter 16, v 58 and 59, it states, "And when the birth of a daughter is announced to one of them, his face becomes black and he is full of wrath. He hides himself from the people because of the evil of what is announced to him. Shall he keep it with disgrace or bury it alive in the dust? Now surely evil is what they judge." Can you imagine what kind of person would have had these thoughts? But this was a barbarous custom of the Arab people, especially among the chiefs of the clans. However, the word of Allah swept through Arabia and this practice was abolished. But generally, in history the practice of infanticide has taken many forms. In the ancient world, it was known as child sacrifice, where a child was sacrificed to a supernatural figure or forces. In ancient Europe and Asia, they simply abandoned the infant, leaving it to die from exposure, that is from hypothermia, hunger, thirst, or animal attack. In ancient Oceania, they practiced infanticide by suffocating the infant, and in other countries and tribes, infanticide was practiced in order to control their numbers so that their lands could support them. Many carried out this horrible act due to the ability of a male child carrying on the family name until he dies, as opposed to the female who will leave to join her husband's family most of the time after a burdensome dowry is paid. Another reason infanticide was practiced has been related to economic necessity, or the inability to provide for the child. However, the Quran clearly states in Ch 6, section 19, Guiding Rules of Life, v 151, say, "Come. I will recite what your Lord has forbidden to you, associate not with him and do good to parents and slay not your children for fear of poverty we provide for you and for them," and again in Ch 17, v 31, "And kill not your children for fear of poverty we provide for them and for you, surely the killing of them is a great wrong. Now this verse may not necessarily be speaking of actually ending your child's life. The verse can be interpreted to mean not giving your children a proper education, or intellectual death. History has shown that females were not given an education, that males were educated, for they were to be the breadwinners in a family, and it was commonly accepted that women needed only to be prepared to be effective wives and mothers. Consequently, their education was most often confined to emulating their mothers and obeying their fathers within the home. Today, thankfully, that has changed. There is gender equality in almost every sector of the world. Women are rising up in the workplace and becoming leaders. For this we should be happy. However, a small question is now raised: when both parents leave for the workplace, going there to earn a living, to ensure that the bills are paid and the family lives a comfortable life, where does that leave the children? Don't get me wrong, women were built strong, we can do everything men can do and sometimes even better. However, there is one thing that only a woman could do, and that is being a mother. So, I ask a question now: is this another form of killing your children by leaving them with a caregiver rather than being there for them yourselves? What are they learning when you are not around to teach them? Who are they emulating? Every society is made up of blocks of family units. The stronger each block is, the stronger the structure of the society. Families are thus the building blocks upon which rests the fate of society. For the development of good families, the mother plays a vital role. Chapter 46 v 15 of the Holy Quran says, "And we have enjoined on man the doing of good to his parents. His mother bears him with trouble, and she brings him forth in pain. And the bearing of him and the weaning of him is 30 months. In today's workplace, maternity leave is 14 weeks, which is 3.5 months, while the Quran says 30 months, which is 2.5 years. That is a hard decision right there, but we need to make good decisions that are based on caring in the best possible way for our children. Allah has said, "Fear not, we will provide for them and for you." So, then what do we do? When my husband and I made the decision for me to take a break from work to be with our kids, someone said to me, "You're lucky, you're on a permanent vacation." Because now, society has fashioned working mothers, so that it is taboo or looked down on to be a full-time mother. When I was working, I would get a lunch hour, I would get time to have a cup of coffee and snacks, I would get bathroom breaks by myself, and when I had to travel I would get some me time while sitting in a taxi to just listen to music or whatever, or when my husband would pick me up we had some alone time together. But being a mother means you don't get any of that, not until they fall asleep, and most of the times you're falling asleep along with them. It is not a bed of roses all the time, but it is a bed I chose and one that I have been blessed with. Therefore, we must always try to give our children every opportunity that presents itself, help them to grow and develop into wonderful, educated people. Do not stifle their growth by limiting their intellectual and spiritual education, because that in itself would be a form of killing your children. When we were children, our parents would send us outside to play. We would run and play hide and seek, or gun shooting, or pretend to be a princess or a firefighter. But the point is, we would be outside playing, and most of the times the neighbors' kids there playing with us. But today we don't see that. Kids today sit for hours on end watching television or playing on a PlayStation or Xbox or their tablets or cell phones. This cannot be right. Our parents would always ensure we had a good home-cooked meal ready and waiting for us, but now it's KFC and McDonald's. These fast food organizations use so much chemicals and steroids in their foods. Are we killing our children? Are we doing something wrong here? It is hard being a parent. We make so many mistakes, we have so many decisions to make that can affect not only us but those young precious lives that Allah has entrusted us with. Lives that we have to nurture and love and discipline and sometimes scream at for them to listen, but nonetheless, lives that we love with every atom of our being, with every beat of our heart. Those little fingers and toes that we have to care for, we were given such a gift from Almighty Allah that we sometimes doubt that we are doing the right thing, that the decisions that we make are the right ones, but again Allah has said, "Fear not, we will provide for them and you." So, we now have to take comfort in that and believe that we are doing our best to help our children flourish and grow emotionally, physically, intellectually, and spiritually, and trust that Allah will guide us and provide for us so that we can present into our society strong, happy, educated, religious, kind and humble human beings. End of article.